Hello and welcome back to A Glass of OJ. I am Oddjob. And today, would obviously like to talk about third-party risk. So, obviously in everybody's inboxes, soon to come from every vendor is how we could have stopped and detected the SolarWinds breach and the SolarWinds compromise, and how we could have protected you from third-party tools being compromised. Really? It's going to happen, and you're going to see it in the next coming weeks. But for those of you catching up and using me as your source for InfoSec news, I'm usually several weeks behind the curve, not inspired to immediately give a video. But basically what happened is last week, FireEye reported that they had been breached by what they claimed was a nation state. They claimed, or at least other people claimed based on the evidence that was being looked at, that it's likely it was APT-29, which is a Russian nation-state threat actor. FireEye, however, was using some kind of UNC designation, basically indicating that they don't know who it was, but this is what it is. So UNC 2452. Handy little news notes off to the side here for this one. But that's not all, as they say. And yeah, I do this in one go. I don't like to do editing, so yes, the light is flickering in the background here. So sorry about that. So that's not all, as they say on TV. So the federal government just announced this morning that the Treasury and Commerce departments actually were attacked as well. And so, as I was reading this, I was thinking, now, how do they know that this is related to FireEye? Because that's what they were saying. They were saying this is related to the FireEye compromise. Well, now some more information's come out, and apparently this has to do with a compromise in the supply chain for a tool called SolarWinds. And anybody who's been in enterprise network systems management monitoring, everybody knows who SolarWinds is. And it's specifically the SolarWinds Orion product. Basically, any product from SolarWinds Orion, the Orion product, anything that was released from March to June, is what SolarWinds says. Those are the versions that are compromised. And so they have lovely little DLLs that will send beacons back home to Mother Russia or wherever this thing's coming from. And, that'll give them persistence and access into those systems. Which is actually very impactful because for anybody, again, who has been inside an Orion environment, you really get God-level access once you're inside Orion. If you have system-level access to Orion, you can get into any system you want. You can work inside any system you want, essentially. I'm not going to go through all the details on all that, but you get a clear map of what's going on in the environment, where everything is. So if you have SolarWinds right now, go check your version numbers. And I don't know, it's just always the paranoid or extra suspect and skeptical me. I don't know if they stopped at Orion. Did they also do IPAM? Did they do a few other tools? I don't know. Orion, though, would be really the software of opportunity here because of the level of control it has over your systems. So what if you're a smaller organization and you go, yeah, but we don't use SolarWinds here. We're too small for that. Do you have any MSPs or third parties that are managing systems of yours? Ask if they're using SolarWinds. You may not know what they're using on the back end with their own environment or inside your environment. Maybe you do have SolarWinds, but you're not hosting it. Maybe you have some third party who's hosting it for you. Ask them, what is the version of that? Start investigating those avenues. Really, if you have any kind of suspicion about this, you should really dust off your third-party risk and third-party threat playbook on this, an incident response playbook on this. And you should dust that off and start going over, at least reading it and figuring out what kinds of questions you need to ask of your vendors, what kinds of questions you need to ask of your partners. What if you have some B2B connections going to places that you know have SolarWinds? This is a perfect opportunity for information security departments across organizations to actually be talking with each other and doing a fairly good job of that. And so talking with your partners, IT environments, asking them questions like this. Sometimes they're not going to be able to answer these questions, and you legally may not be able to answer these questions for other people. But these questions really do need to be asked. And by asking these things, you are putting like a small social pressure on them to at least give some kind of answer, or at least draw attention to this, that this is a threat for you. You care a lot about this, especially if there's email. Now there's a paper trail. If for some reason there's a compromise, somebody investigates later and says, yeah, we were talking to you earlier, there's now some negligence, right? So there's all these types of avenues that you need to go down and you need to start looking at. Take another drink of OJ. Always good to have your OJ in the morning, just like you're having today. And it's always important to go down these avenues and get with your third-party risk person. They're going to maybe have a register of all the different third parties that you have business with. There may be people you're not even thinking of. Think of HVAC. Think of HVAC systems. I don't know. Do HVAC systems manage their HVAC nodes and endpoints via SolarWinds? Is that a part of what's going on? Do they have VPN connectivity and they manage all these things via SolarWinds? Are there things in an OT environment managed by SolarWinds? Are there various? I don't know. There's a lot of things I could go down and think about in a hospital. In a hospital, we think about COVID right now and the pandemic. Are there medical devices and systems running MRI and other types of machines? Are they being monitored by SolarWinds Orion? Are they? Do you have those types of things? And again, you may not always be the actual people running, managing, maintaining SolarWinds. It may be a third party. You may not even realize that this is actually running in your environment because, that third party is kind of a black box. You just said, go do the thing, and they went and did the thing. And so they're using SolarWinds and you don't even know it. So ask these questions. This is a perfect opportunity to get to know your third parties better. This is a perfect opportunity, and you should really seize upon it to ask them these questions and to figure out what exactly is running in your environment, and get to the bottom of that. And of course, have them take care of this. If you're a third party running SolarWinds, get your stuff updated right now. I mean, if you're all the way back to March out of date on your SolarWinds and you're running it for customer environments, first of all, shame on you. You shouldn't be running that far out of date on your systems for your customers, for goodness sake. But I get it. Sometimes people are very slow to upgrade for various business reasons. So you need to look at upgrading. You need to get in with the latest. This is not merely a patch problem, right? This isn't a vulnerability that just exists as a matter of code. This is a vulnerability that specifically exists in SolarWinds Orions because a bad person put it there. This is beyond a vulnerability. For those who manage vulnerabilities out there, this is another type of vulnerability. This is a supply chain embedded exploit or vulnerability that exists, rather, that can be easily exploited and supposedly exploited by these folks. Reminds me of the nation state vulnerabilities that the NSA and the American government had put in various places. Thanks to Snowden. Drink some OJ for Snowden. Thanks to Snowden and some other bits of information gained from WikiLeaks and other places, we found out that things like Juniper and other places had nation-state built backdoors into them. And I think a couple of those were actually, if I remember correctly, was Juniper going through and doing a code review of things and then going like, what are those credentials? Why is Batman a credential here? And what does this little routine do? Oh, it's a door. Interesting. Why is there a back door in all of our switches and routers now? Why is that in our software? So that happens, but because of these revelations, people then start taking a closer look to see if anybody's embedded stuff in there. But remember that this is what you do when you trust third parties. This is what happens when you trust all sorts of things, and everybody's a third party. Think about Microsoft installing. You have Windows 10, you have Windows 2019 running in your clouds and your servers. Those are third parties. You don't know and get to see all the code running on there. You don't get to see that stuff. They do. And so what you're doing is you're trusting that their supply chain is good. You're trusting that their coding skills are good. You're trusting them to plug vulnerabilities. And in this case, what you're trusting them to do is to know when a supply chain issue happens. Unfortunately, they had to go back after the fact to SolarWinds and find that indeed SolarWinds had been compromised. So, and since March, it appears. So, and I'd imagine if they were compromised since March, SolarWinds probably had been compromised months earlier, and the bad guys were looking at the source code, looking for opportunities and ways to inject some malicious stuff. So, the actual malware or vulnerability that's in SolarWinds Orion is called Sunburst. I think Microsoft called it a terrible name that's really hard to pronounce, called SolarWinds. Yeah, Sunburst is easier to remember. It probably has a better logo, of course. Make sure you get your sunburst.com and logo as soon as possible if you're going to announce a brand name for your third-party supply chain compromise. What are your thoughts? And of course, this news is going to be developing as we go along here. But what are your thoughts? Do you think this is nothing? What else do you think's going on here? Do you think it's the Russians? Do you think it's APT-29? Do you think it's somebody else? Could it have been the U.S. government? The U.S. government's done stuff to American companies before. Don't think that they're above doing anything as well. So just because we say it's nation state doesn't mean it's foreign. But security experts, as they say, do think it was someone foreign, and Russia seems to be a fairly good one. But the Treasury and Commerce Department hacked. We find this out right after the FireEye hack. Sure enough, leads back to a common threat vector, which is SolarWinds. If you have SolarWinds, get it updated. Talk to your third parties. Get more intimate with your third party process. The way you address their risk when future third parties come out. Talk to them. Put it in try to get in contract. Work with your legal team. Tell them how important it is as a third party that you're able to ask these questions and that you should be able to ask these questions on demand, especially with a news event like this. Don't forget your OJ. I'll see you in the next one.